Hey everybody, Jay the Fish Guy here. So the bank tank has come home. If you guys are familiar with the series, this was a small nano reef that I put together for a local bank, and I was the business of the month, so this was my part of my display down at the bank. If you want to get caught up on the build process, I'll have a link up to the top to start you off with video number 1. And I think I did a total of 3 or 4 videos about the whole build process and how we got to this point. But this video, we're just going to kind of go through and talk about how things went in the last month. I got a bunch of pictures that I took during the month, kind of like doing a little time lapse to showcase how things progressed and how things grew. So let's take a look at that while I talk about the tank. So this tank was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoy doing nano reef tanks. I enjoyed the challenge of trying to make an aquascape that works in a small space, and picking and choosing livestock that will work again in a small area. It's for me it's a lot of fun. I enjoy the nano tanks. So this tank did exceptionally well. And I really didn't have any doubts about that fact, because again, this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to small reef tanks. But for a lot of people, I think this is going to be a proof of concept for a lot of my ideas and things that I've talked about in various videos. That, it's all well and good to talk about it and, say that you know what's going on, but to have proof of it and a record of it, so to speak, to showcase these ideas in action and actually working, it brings it to a whole nother level. So that was part of the fun of doing this tank, is that I was able to really showcase, hey, this works. This ideology, this concept in small reef keeping really does work. So what am I really talking about? Well, being able to set up a tank from nothing and having it be a full-blown reef tank in, let's say, I think it was 7 to 10 days, was from my first video to where I was actually building the light fixture and then getting water in it to the time that I delivered it to the bank. I went from a empty, barren, devoid tank to a fully stocked reef tank in that time period. And did I have any issues? No. The most that I had was a very, very small brown diatom bloom that happened right before I took it to the bank. And then after I put in my cleanup crew, within a few days that was cleaned up, and for the rest of the month there was no issues whatsoever. So let's talk about the cleanup crew real quick. I did a video talking about what's an appropriately sized cleanup crew for a reef tank. And over that time, the time that I've had it up and posted, I've gotten a few, I'm not going to say negative comments, but a little bit pushing back against that ideology. And I will agree that if you scale up the recommendation, and my recommendation is a crab per gallon and then a snail for every 2 gallons. If you scale that up to, let's say, a 200-gallon tank or even 125, yes, that sounds a little bit overkill. And I will agree, it doesn't scale very well for larger tanks. And I guess when I made the video, the idea was that I was speaking to a lot of new hobbyists who more than likely had a smaller tank, much more likely that they wouldn't have anything over 75 gallons. And that's really who I was speaking to. So in this tank, in this bank tank, let's assume thereabouts based on my measurements, it's around 15 gallons. So what I did for a cleanup crew was just simply 15 crabs and 7 snails. And they've worked out extremely well. Feeding has been somewhat to a minimum. I don't tend to really go gangbusters feeding tanks like this, only because I had a very simple stock list of fish. I had a Banggai cardinal, I had a yellowtail blue damsel, and I had a clownfish. So all of those guys were eating small pellets, so I fed them just simply a very small pinch of New Life Spectrum pellets. More often than not, it was once a day, Monday through Friday, and then they had the weekend off. Because more often than not, I'm at the bank Monday through Friday doing some deposits or what have you. So that minimal amount of food, coupled with the cleanup crew that I spoke about, was enough to keep this tank relatively devoid of algae. At the most, there was a very, very, very light film that I'd have to use the magnet scraper for on the front glass, but as far as the sand and the rock was concerned, there was barely anything on there. Part of it, too, I think, was the fact that it was near a window, and I was getting a lot of light coming through the window. I'm guessing while it's here at the house, I'm going to have even less film developing on the front glass. So what did I do for maintenance? Honestly, for that entire month, nothing. I topped off for evaporation. That was it. This tank was running so smooth, the parameters were so stable, there wasn't a need to do anything to the tank whatsoever. Now that it's at home, and I'm going to try to shoot for a little more growth out of the SPS, now that I see the SPS are actually doing amazingly well considering the low power LED fixture that's on it, I'm going to try to encourage some extra growth out of that. So when they came home, I ended up doing a full bucket, 5-gallon bucket water change on the tank after I set it back up, or I should say as I was setting it back up. And then from now on, I'll probably end up doing a 5-gallon bucket every 2 weeks. And what that's going to do for me, it's going to replenish any trace elements that the limited amount of corals are going to be pulling out. And that'll keep water parameters stable for me and continue with the good growth. Any, bad water parameters that may be developing, which again, I doubt due to my very, very limited feeding schedule, will also be taken care of during this water change as well. So that's about it. That's the beautiful thing about these small tanks. If you don't overdo it with fish and you don't go crazy throwing massive amounts of food into the tank, there isn't a whole lot of work to be done. It's just sit back and enjoy the tank and, watch everything grow and progress. Over the month, I only had a single issue, and that issue was actually the Xenia frag that I had in there. If you guys caught my video on soft corals, which I'll put a link at the top of the screen to, you'll note that during that video I talked about Xenia a little bit and referenced the fact that it's a dirty water-loving coral, and not dirty in the sense of bad parameters, but they do like a more nutrient-rich environment. And sadly, because of this, the Xenia just simply faded away. Everything else in the tank has flourished and done very well, but it's just too clean of a system for that Xenia. So sadly, that was the one loss during the month, but overall, I consider it to be a resounding success. It's just a great little tank, and I've thoroughly enjoyed having it around, and it's going to be nice having it at the house here for a little while longer. This particular bank has another branch on the other side of town, and I'm going to be the business of the month at that branch for the month of December. So I'll post a few updates here and there between now and then talking about the tank. I'm probably going to do some remodeling. I ended up adding more rock to the tank just to get a slightly different look. And now I have to rearrange some corals. Placement of everything right now isn't going to be where it's going to stay. The giant green bubble coral takes a lot of real estate. When that thing is happy, it just feels like it takes up a third of the tank. So I love the coral. I just don't know if it's going to be able to stay in there and really achieve the look that I'm going for. So we'll have to see about that as time progresses. But well, I think I'm going to end it here, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions or comments about the tank, please leave them down in the comments section below. I always love hearing from you guys. And we'll catch you on the next one.